iPhone 16 will be released in 2 days. We're expecting it to continue the iPhone filmmaking revolution that iPhone 15 started last year. We all saw how Apple took a huge leap into filmmaking when it gave us ProRes log shooting and a stabilized telephoto lens. They even showed us how it's done by shooting the whole keynote with the iPhone 15. Now they need to keep up this momentum with another leap this year. We're not just looking for new camera features, but we also need Apple to fix many of the issues the iPhone 15 suffered from. In this episode, I'll first tell you about the confirmed rumors we're expecting to see in the new iPhone 16 and how they will make a difference for us as filmmakers. Then I'll share the 8 most important filmmaking features that didn't make it into this rumors list, but would make a huge difference in the way we use our iPhones as filmmaking tools. Let's dive in. Let's first discuss some of the rumors we've been hearing that will directly affect the overall camera and video recording performance. The first major rumor is the introduction of a multi-function capture button. This dedicated camera button will act like a shutter release on mirrorless cameras. It'll offer a half press to focus or full press to record, plus the ability to swipe for zooming in or out. I'm guessing all these gestures will be customizable too. Next up, we're looking at a modest 5% bump in battery capacity. While that's good news for longer shooting times, what's even better is the potential for much faster charging. We should see 40-watt charging through USB-C, up from the current 27 watts, and 20 watts through MagSafe instead of the current 15 watts. Combine this with the bigger battery and the power efficiency of the new processor, and you might not need an external battery solution while shooting video anymore. The phone already offers decent shooting time before needing a charge, and when you do need to charge, you could potentially get up to 50% in less than 20 minutes. A lunch break could be all you need for a full charge. Heat management is also getting an upgrade. We might see graphene used for better heat dissipation, replacing the copper in current iPhone heat sinks. This is great news for preventing overheating during those long shooting sessions. On the camera front, we're hearing about a substantial upgrade to the ultra-wide lens to 48 megapixels from the previous 12 megapixels. This could be the same sensor from the current main 24mm camera, which is great news since that's the best performing camera of the three. This 48 megapixel sensor is what we call 8K in video, that uses the 16:9 portion of the sensor. This 8K image is used to create a high-quality oversampled 4K image. Oversampling process has a lot of awesome benefits to the image that the wide lens will now benefit from after this upgrade. Fingers crossed this resolution bump will make it in the telephoto lens too, since it's the worst performing lens of them all, but that might have to wait for the iPhone 17. Finally, all this will be orchestrated by a new A18 Pro chip, Apple's new AI-optimized chip that will boost everything from AI capabilities to intense image processing, which ties into many points I'll cover next in our Pro Filmmakers wishlist. Starting with ProRes RAW recording, we already saw the great leap in the iPhone 15 with the introduction of Apple Log and ProRes, so it's more of an expectation than wishful thinking for Apple to introduce ProRes RAW in the iPhone 16. The new A18 Pro chip should pack enough processing power to make this possible, and considering how internal RAW recording is slowly becoming the new norm these days, it makes sense for Apple to join the trend. Let's not forget how Apple is keen in pushing their own RAW format into our workflows, and the iPhone could be the best way to democratize ProRes RAW recording. Still harnessing the power of the new A18 chip, we should see higher frame rates from the iPhone 16. It's been 10 years now since we saw 240 frames in Full HD for the first time in the iPhone 6 slow-mo setting, then 60 frames in 4K a couple of years later in the iPhone 8. Then there was nothing for all these following years, despite the major sensor and camera advancements and upgrades that happened during that time. So I think it's about time we get at least 4K 120p or higher on the iPhone 16 and potentially 360 frames if not higher in Full HD. Which brings me to my next point. It's about enabling all high-speed recording modes in log. It's just frustrating that you can only shoot 240 frames in Rec 709 and HEVC on their native app or Final Cut app, but once you set it to ProRes, the only codec so far that can support log in these apps, it maxes out at 60 frames. So I hope Apple fixes this in the iPhone 16 and lets us use log across all frame rates, codecs, and resolutions. Next wish on the list is AI-enhanced focus tracking. We saw how iOS 18 will offer AI capabilities, which will be powered by the new A18 Pro chip, designed specifically to maximize your AI experience. So let's hope the iPhone will bring some of its AI powers into more advanced focus tracking features. We already have basic autophase detection in their basic camera app, but it's all automated. You can't really track and lock onto a specific face if you want to, and you don't have any face detection controls in any of the Pro apps, such as the Blackmagic camera app. You can't even track objects like we have in our mirrorless cameras. All you can do is to lock your focus plane, but once you move a bit, you lose focus and it won't adjust, simply because it's not smart enough to recognize the object you're trying to track. So let's hope Apple's intelligence lives up to its name and is intelligent enough to bring the focus tracking experience we're used to from our mirrorless cameras into our phones, if not even surpass it. After all, these phones are way smarter than our cameras. I also wish we get improved and consistent low-light performance across all lenses. We already have pretty decent low-light performance on the main camera on a high ISO, but it's not quite up to par on all lenses. You can see how the wide is worse, and the tele is by far the worst. Besides that, the 24mm has a wider aperture. It's also the only one that's oversampling from its 8K sensor, while both tele and wide lenses are two different 4K sensors. So the rumored upgrade of the wide lens to 48 megapixels should already improve its low-light performance. But this will leave the tele lens as the weakest link in the chain and might end up being more problematic in post when you try to match your clips to each other. That's when the A18 chip once again might come handy. It could apply some AI-powered noise reduction magic and improve the overall low-light performance. The other solution could be for both the 13 and 120mm lenses to get wider apertures. This will not only give us better low-light performance at the same ISO, but we'd also get some shallow depth of field we've been missing from our mirrorless cameras. Which brings me to my next point about the need to have constant apertures across all iPhone lenses, just like we're used to in cinema lenses kits with constant apertures across all their lineups. Let's go back to this breakdown. What we have here is fixed apertures, meaning you can't change their values, and each has very different value from the others. There's 2/3 of a stop difference between each lens, which causes this noticeable exposure shift every time you switch between them. And you'll need to account for that and compensate for it by either changing ISO or shutter angle settings, or maybe using a variable ND. None of these are ideal situations. You can see the obvious inconsistency in exposures between these three clips shot in the same lighting conditions. So matching the apertures across all lenses would fix that discrepancy. I know it's easier said than done, so to be more realistic, maybe just narrow the gap between them to just 1/3 of a stop. And even better, maybe match two of them. And why not also start using proper cinematography scales, like T-stops instead of f-stops, to help us properly measure the actual exposure difference between each lens. Unlike f-stop, T-stop is the scale used in cinema lenses to measure actual light transmission through the lens, which is crucial to help maintaining consistent exposure across different focal lengths. Still talking about lenses, I wish we get macro on the main 24mm lens. We know the current macro feature is limited to the ultra-wide lens with an impressive super close minimum focus distance of only 1 inch, while the 24mm is 7 inches and the 120mm lens is a whopping 36 inches. We know the most popular macro lenses we use in product shots, beauty or even nature, usually fall within the medium-long range of 100mm. That's pretty far from the super wide 13mm lens on the iPhone, so I hope Apple enables macro at least in the main 24mm, or just reduce the minimum focusing distance on both to a more reasonable range. This would be great for two reasons. First, to allow for macro shots without the massive distortion inherent to ultra-wide lenses. Second, to introduce some of the signature shallow depth of field we know from macro lenses, which is hard to achieve on super wide lenses due to their inherent optical design. The last point in my wish list is to have internal 32-bit float audio recording. This is like the equivalent of RAW in audio. 32-bit audio is gaining a lot of momentum and is becoming standard nowadays. We already have many affordable options out there, whether from lav mics, field recorders, or even camera modules. And on the other hand, we have many iPhone mics popping out lately that can record directly on the phone via USB-C. And I'm sure Apple can easily design an iPhone that's more than capable to record 32-bit float. So let's hope they make it happen soon, whether in the iPhone 16 or later. So these are the 8 Pro Filmmaker features I feel would make a huge difference in our iPhone filmmaking and narrow the gap between smartphone cameras and dedicated video cameras, offering a pretty decent and versatile filmmaking tool that fits in your pocket. If you're still watching, I have one last bonus feature for you. That's adding a tally light in the front. It's pretty standard in all cameras already that we often forget they exist. So why not, in this front-facing LED light, add another tiny red LED that turns on while recording? I know it might not make much of a difference to you, but believe me, all talents and actors will thank you for it. Let me know your thoughts about these potential upgrades in the comments below. Which one would have the biggest impact on your workflow, and which ones I forgot to mention? And don't forget, there's no such thing as a perfect camera. The best camera is the one you already have, and in this case, it might be the one in your pocket. Hope you liked this episode. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.